Oh yeah, Black Sun in the Hizzle. Oh, for shizzle dizzle. We got an excellent show here today. We got brother Zanzi in the house. What up, Zanzi?
Hello, very glad to be here tonight.
Yeah. All right. So you're gonna I know Yang is gonna he's running late, so he's gonna be here in a little bit, but I know the topic is why don't you present us with the topic you got?
Yes, well, today we're gonna discuss the First Nations of Canada. Um, like we introduced yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
the First Nations of Canada are the general name, and I'd say that it's not the best name. It's a colonial name for um, indigenous people of Canada, or what you might call Native Americans in the United States. Um, and there's the best terms always the original terms in the language of each of those nations, but to represent them as a group, we usually call them Indigenous people of Canada, right?
Okay.
And the government recognized them as First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people of Canada.
Okay.
So
Right.
that's an introduction of the complexity of the subject already and the way they are named, right?
Right.
There's the way most people would call them, which is Indigenous people of Canada as a group, the way the government recognizes them, and the way they call themselves. Now, um, the way I intend to present all this, right, is through a brief summary of the general history of Indigenous people of Canada and their interaction with European colonizers, be it the French or the British
Right.
uh, colonizers that came in, and later on with the creation of Canada, the Canadian government, right?
Okay.
Um, I my position in all this is that I am of uh, First Nation ancestry.
Okay.
Um, I have not been raised into a First Nation community, right?
Okay.
My grandmother, well, my great grandmother, my grandfather's mother, was uh, married to a European settler, and out of their marriage came my grandfather.
Okay.
And my grandfather never really talked about uh, her, her mother. He insisted of the importance of his indigenous and our indigenous ancestry, of the culture of her mother, but of his mother. But his mother died really young. Is what I discovered in the years uh, after his death. She died at around 20 years old, 20
Okay.
between 20 and 25. Um, and now I've been on a quest in the latest in the late in the latest year to try and uncover a little bit more about that and my cultural roots. But since I was about 10, I've been very much trying to understand the realities of the different indigenous communities. When I had the opportunity to go live, I was supposed to go and work within an indigenous community, an Inuit community in Nunavut in the northern Canada, but it kind of didn't work out, and I was posted in northern Saskatchewan instead. So I wasn't working directly in the indigenous community at that point. I was living in a and working in a town uh, right next to it,
Okay.
but I spent most of my free time um, in the indigenous community, the Flying Dust Reservation in Saskatchewan, and uh, I, uh, I witnessed and I experienced a very different interaction with Native communities there in Western Canada
Right.
than I did in eastern Canada, in Quebec, the French-speaking part of Canada where I live right now. So
Right.
I'll try. I'll be able to speak as to the general history in Canada and more of the relationship that affected my family and that affected um, uh, the communities around where I grew up in Quebec. But I also have an inkling of any idea, if you will, of how the similarities and the differences in Western Canada
All right.
through my discussions and through my experiences in the time I lived there. So right. Before we get started into the little history summary, do you have any questions on what I discussed yet, or just so far?
So I guess the okay. So what is the name of the First Nation?
Of sorry,
The name of the nation.
of which the nation my grandmother came from?
Yeah.
Right. So my grandfather always said that we were Algonquins, right? Um,
Duncan's.
Algonquins.
Okay.
Um, So Algonquins, Algonquin is a colonizer name, right?
Oh, okay.
It's the name that was given to the nomadic people of Canada that spoke a language that got classified as an Algonquinian language, right?
Right.
And the inverse of that, or the opposite of that, the second group, because Algonquin is a subdivision, my main subdivision would be the Iroquoians um, uh,
Iacoian.
nations. Iroquoians.
Iroquois. Okay. Okay.
Iroquois. Iroquois, right?
Oh, okay.
Iroquois. Iroquois. And the Iroquoians, those guys would be maybe an example of an Iroquoian group would be the Mohawks, right? If you've heard about
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
right, so
Hmm.
those are Iroquoian groups. Group they are agricultural. They were sedentary. They had a much more defined social and political structure. Uh, at some extent than most of the Algonquinian groups, which were nomadic, right? Hunter
Right.
gatherers. They weren't
Okay.
agricultural.
Okay.
An example of Algonquinian groups that you might have heard about um, would be well, I don't know the English name, right? Again, the Innu people. I don't know if you've heard of the Innu people, but those would be Algonquinian group, right?
Okay.
And now, my grandfather always said that we were Algonquinian, right? Never mentioned the exact nation or the name in the language and in the Algonquinian language of our people, right?
Right.
Um, but at the end of the day, um, when in my research, now you don't know who Curé Labelle is, right? But he's a religious, he's a priest, I guess, that pretty much developed the north of Quebec, right? Developed, quote unquote, right?
Right. Right.
Christianized. And um, he's the first one to do any kind of census of the people in Quebec, right? So
Hmm.
in the census of Curé Labelle, my family lived, it is reported as marrying in an Iroquoian community called Ganaziragay. And um, they are, but they moved out of this community in 1865 to go to Maniwaki, a reservation that's been created by the government at that time in Maniwaki. Interestingly, uh, and we'll get to why in the summary of the history, but in the territory of Ganaziragay, uh, even though it's it's a Girenon territory or a Mohawk territory. Um, as the French people were coming down the St. Lawrence River, they pushed back the different native community that lived around it, and they pushed them back to Montreal Island, and then they pushed it back to mountain region,
Right.
and that's where Galazadage is, right?
Right.
So you had a mix of different ethnicities, if you call them, or different cultural groups, different First Nation groups, right? The Nisisiping, you had different Algonquinians, um, uh, cultures. You even have different Mohawk culture, not just the Kanaziragayonan that lived there, right? And uh, in 1865, that's the time where the Canadian government, or would-be Canadian government at that point, they decided to create reservations
Right.
for the different nations that lived there. Uh, and that's going to be important when we come to the difference between the reservations and uh, tribal land, right? Original ancestral land. But basically, they wanted to use the land at Ganazidake, so they decided to create reservations around Canada to move the people there, and they created reservations for the Algonquinan people. They created reservations for the Nissisiping people. They created reservation for the Mohawk people, right?
Right.
Without care as to the more subtle differences in the Algonquinian and in the Mohawk people. Um, and my family moved towards the Algonquin reservation. So maybe that's why my grandfather thought we were Algonquian because we moved there. Maybe the family moved there because they were Algonquian and not Mohawk, and they saw this as an opportunity to just follow the other member of their culture. I That's part of the things that that it's very hard to uncover, right? As my grandfather died, not wanting to really discuss it. And I learned afterwards why, because he was affected by the religious school, right? He was beaten, he was
Oh
ridiculized because
man.
of his native status. So it was a traumatizing experience for him. And
Now
I
when
don't
you
know
say
why his mother died young, but it must have affected him, right? So, oh,
now when you
go ahead.
say the religious school, were these Catholic, Christian? What exactly? I want to pinpoint it.
Christian, mostly Catholic
Christian,
in Quebec, Protestant in some
Protestant.
other part
Okay.
of Canada. Well, no, no, mostly Catholic, pretty much all over Canada. I'm guessing
Yeah,
that there
okay.
might have been Protestant schools that are as horrible, but the Catholics one are more known for the horrible things they did that we'll discuss a little bit later on, I guess.
Okay.
But um, yeah, so the answer, long-winded to answer to your question is that. Uh, Most likely Algonquinian, potentially Iroquoian. There's been right. I've seen the marriage certificates of my great great grandfather and all that, and there's most likely they live so long into a mixed uh, of a mixed society of different First Nation people in the Two Mountain area that I wouldn't be surprised that if I finish all the research associated with the deep ancestry, we'd find that it's most likely a mix of different nation, right? And that's what happened in those melting pots. Some community didn't have the same mix, and that lead to some other issue in the way Canada treats well, First Nation status in the end of the day, right? But
Well, let me
yeah,
ask my first question. So the um the Catholic schools, I mean, I guess this would be a multi-faceted question. Number one, um, do the now let me just ask a basic elementary question. What is the purpose of the reservations, to your
of the
understanding?
reservations.
Hmm.
Mm, That's a complex. That's a very complex answer. So the stated purpose, right,
Hmm.
would be to recognize land as being as belonging to indigenous communities,
Okay.
by allowing them some kind of governance over those lands. So that's the
Okay.
stated purpose of reservations.
Okay. And so in these reservations,
The
do you
the
have
the
like
underlying purpose, if you're interested in it, no, no, okay, go ahead.
no, 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 go ahead, go ahead. I mean, I want you
Oh,
to, yeah, feel free to
the
explain.
underlying
Yeah.
purpose of reservation, right? Like I've said, is to move indigenous people around and contain them in areas, right? In the sense that
Okay.
uh, contain their economic opportunities in some areas. Let's say it like that.
Okay, so
Because
I see where I want to go with this because yeah, I mean I get I like that answer, but I want to see what the government's purpose is because you got reservations, and in these reservations you have Catholics coming to the reservation.
oh no, the Catholic
Oh,
schools are not in the reservation. The
oh,
Catholic
okay, got
school,
you.
their goal is to get the kids out of the reservations.
To get the kids out of the reservations.
Yeah, well, it was their goal. They don't really do that anymore. Now it's the child protection services that do that job.
So okay, so the original purpose that they give for the reservations was to be sovereign.
Absolutely not.
No.
They're
Okay.
comparable to a township government, a city government at most.
So, but it's supposed to have some type of autonomy, right? The
I
reservation.
stated autonomy, a wall of myths trying to confuse people that don't care into thinking they've got something, but really giving nothing to the people concerned about those issues.
No, I understand that, Zenzi, but what I'm trying to understand here is that
Right.
okay, so you
You
got
think they've
child
got,
services.
yeah.
I'm trying to see what words they're using, and I want to see the contradiction. I know
Hmm.
you're, but I want to take this step by step so we can
Yeah.
just show the blatant contradiction. So,
Hmm.
the reservations is supposed to allow the tribes an autonomy, correct?
Well, it's within some limits, within some confines, some very clearly defined confines in the Indian law. Well, it was called, well, it's still called the Indian Act, I guess. So in the
Right,
Indian Act, it's described there what's needed to have an indigenous status, and it's described there what land can, well, our land can be set aside as reservation, and that's land that's given by the federal government to the different indigenous nations, in which they have some kind of ability to govern themselves. That ability to govern themselves is akin to the ability that a city government has to govern on its territory, right? So
okay,
they are ruled by a government apparatus created by the Canadian government that's called a band council, right? This
right,
band council is elected by the community at different intervals. Um, Again, following a Canadian model, right?
right.
And those band councils then administrate the community, but they have to follow a model that's Canadian, right? They have to,
Right.
their community has to be built upon the township model as a town, right? And the powers that they have is to administrate a town, to administrate the police of that town, to administrate the industries on that territory, right? But they still have to follow Canadian laws.
Okay.
They still have to they still have to allow Canadian officials from the federal government, not the provincial government, from the federal government to act on their territory to some extent. And all the money that comes from the federal government is funneled and goes only through this band council, right? And this band council it's very important to differentiate it from the traditional governments, right? Never, ever it has happened that a band council was aligned with a traditional government, that the same people were part of the same, right? So this the band council that get the money and that get to administrate the law on this reservation is a definitely Canadian apparatus of government in which position native people are elected by the people who care about this Canadian system. But the true traditional governments of those different indigenous First Nations, they are not recognized by the government, right? They are ignored to most
Right.
extent. Um, Sometimes when things get heavy and pipelines get blocked,
Right.
they will say, "Well, we care about those traditional governments as long as they work with us to enact our needs and our desires, right? We'll acknowledge them, but only if they cooperate with us, right? If they don't want to hear anything about our projects and our needs and our wants, then no, 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 they are not important. The band councils are agree with us. The band council represents the community, right? So, and I'm not saying that everybody in the community aligns with the traditional governments, right? It's not as monolithic as that, but the this ability to self-govern, this ability to to have autonomy, like you're saying,
Right.
is limited to the same autonomy that the city of Montreal has in the government towards the government of Quebec and the government of Canada, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it's nothing. It's not the autonomy that a people want, right? It's
Right.
yeah.
Hmm. Okay. So, um, my next question, I want to. So I'm trying to find out. So basically, they're forming these. Let me see. I'm curious. Okay, so Trevor has a question. He says, "I'm curious as to what the religious construct is in Canada. America is predominantly Christian. Is it the same in Canada?"
Yes.
Okay.
Most of Canada is some kind of Protestant, Evangelical, Anglican. Um, Quebec is the exception. It's predominantly Catholic. Although right now Quebec is predominantly uh, atheist, right? Because of the Silent Revolution. We discussed that in another show. But historically, Quebec is predominantly Catholic, but there's been some kind of kickback towards religion in Quebec since the 60s and 70s.
Okay. So I mean, oh, that's interesting. Okay, I remember you did talk about that, and damn, Zanzi. I'm trying to. Well, so now here, in the U.S., um, my friend Spotted Wolf said that they are not taxed on goods, so they can bring like, I mean, like
So
okay,
that
like
okay,
tobacco.
so that's
Okay,
interesting because what you're talking about that goes with what I was talking about, where it's also to confine economic opportunities, right?
uh huh,
So what you're talking about, not being taxed on goods, not paying you call them taxes too, but we call them impôts on. So not paying taxes on goods, but also not paying taxes on income taxes, right?
right,
All those things are only when it comes to goods that you trade inside the reservation,
right,
and if you work and live on the reservation, right? If you work
hmm,
and live outside the reservation and the goods you trade outside the reservation, still have to pay taxes on those. Still have to pay income tax on those incomes. Still have to pay taxes on those goods. Um, Now, this might seem like something that you can deal with, but if you've never been on a reservation, you'd be forgiven to think that there's any kind of real economic opportunity that can be realized on those places and those lands. Some nations manage to do something out of it. Some of them by going against. their stewardship duties, as some would say. Some by being able to preserve it, at the expense of others. Again, some would say the relationship between the Cree of northern Quebec, in the James Bay, and the Algonquins of northern Quebec, that's been that have lost all livelihoods because of a deal the Cree made with the Canadian government, uh, is a good example of, you know, how things can be beneficial for one community and very negative for another. Um, so it's yeah. I kind of I'm very sorry, forgot the question almost here, but the different relationships between members of the community, members of the traditional government, members of well, the 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 different states, provinces, and federal apparatuses are very complex to decipher. But most economic opportunities in reservations come either from trying to develop the reservation, develop the land, which is, again, most of the time not ancestral land, not the land that you were supposed to be a steward of, right? Just
Right.
land that the Canadian government moved you to because they needed your land, right? So some communities don't really want to work at developing this land. They have no roots, they have no attachment to the land that the reservation is, right? uh, they want to spend most of the resources fighting to get back their ancestral land. So
Right.
developing this land is sometimes not the way economic opportunity is going to be created. And all the other way you can create economic opportunity is by exploiting this land, right? So on the one hand, you don't want to develop it because it's not the land you're a steward of, and you have to fight to get your land back. But does it are you allowed to exploit another part of Turtle Island, right? To give you the capital to fight. And some communities believe that yes, they can. Some communities don't. Again, it's not monolithic, right? The fight between traditions and modernity is a very complex fight in the First Nation communities. Uh, so yeah, those advantages exist, but they're kind of rigged against development, I'd say, because they don't take into account the culture of the indigenous people, right? They all they all predicated and they all created in the Canadian um, uh, lens, right? So that's how Canadians should live. So that's how we expect you to live, right? We're giving you opportunities. We're giving you breaks, tax breaks, all kind of programs, as long as you develop according to our model, right? Not yours. It's yeah, that's not true self determination.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, shoot. I guess Yang is not showing up, man.
Yeah.
Shit.
Oh well.
Yeah. Shoot. Oh well. Um. So, well, shit, Yang. Zanzi. Um. I guess. I mean, I really don't know what to ask you about the nations. I mean, for First Nations. I mean, I don't
Well,
know.
I can get into my summary. I didn't
Okay.
yet
Okay.
get into that. So,
Okay.
right, the it's hard to say exactly when the Americas were first colonized, right?
Okay.
It's but it's widely. right? Because I won't get into the creation myths. I know you're not a fan of
No, no,
theology,
that's
so
fine. No, no, that's
but
fine. No, no, but no, no. As long, no, the thing about no, that people get this misconception. As long as the religion doesn't try to take over it, that apply theocratic rulership over other people, I don't mind hearing about other cultures. I enjoy reading about them, but it's just when you get into it with the westernized religion, their whole thing is to take over like the planet, like literally, like some real fanatical shit. So that's where they lose me. But no, religions in general, I mean, as long as people keep them to themselves and don't impose them, I have no problem with it.
all
It's just
right.
being
So
forced.
may
Yeah.
then I'll mention it. So
Okay.
right. So, and the reason I'm going to mention it is because, as much as I love science and sociology and anthropology and all the sciences that allow us to try and understand how humans moved about the planet, right? I'm very interested in mythical stories, right? And
Uh-huh.
all pretty much most of so okay, let's see. So most of what we would call First Nation, right? Remember the three names that the government gave, right? The
Hmm.
Métis, which are a specific class, the Inuit, and the First Nation, right? So
Hmm.
right now, let's forget about the Métis and just talk about the Inuit and First Nation, right? Those are two very different groups, right? The indigenous people that live in the far north, right, in the tundra, right, in the ice, right, what we used to call horribly, when you know what this word means, at some point the Eskimos, right? Those
Hmm.
people are completely different in their language, in their genetic makeup, and in
Right.
their culture than what we would call First Nation. The First Nation people, they differ a lot amongst them, right? One of the difference, and that's only one of the difference that we spoke about, was the Iroquoian people versus the Algonquian people. We didn't even talk about the people from the Pacific Northwest at that point, right? But those
Right. So
are
these are
all
all these are different. When you say genetically different, so I'm assuming the
well,
Eskimos come from.
genetically different. We're talking mostly about Inuit versus the whole SWAT of First Nation people, right?
Okay.
So that's there's a very definite genetic difference that's been uh, figured out recently, actually, right? Compared
Oh,
to but there's also other difference in culture, in languages, right?
right.
Um, Iroquoian and Algonquian are not just they're not that much of a genetic difference, right? As much as a cultural and linguistic difference, right?
Okay.
And there are a little bit of genetic differences that that can be, but it's nothing that significant, right? It just allows you to follow different groups, but it's not as prominent as the difference you'd find between people of the Inuit and people of the South, right? South America, right? So the languages are different amongst the First Nation, but most of the creation myth of the First Nation people involve humans coming from a sky kingdom, right? A sky kingdom that's often icy, covered in ice, and
Okay.
falling through a hole, often related to a tree, the sky, the world tree, and falling onto a flooded world on the back of a turtle, right?
Okay.
And having an animal, uh, an earth diver, going and most of the time sacrificing himself to get mud back from the bottom of this flooded world and bring it on the back of the turtle, and from this mud grew Turtle Island on the back of the turtle, the world of North America, right? So Turtle Island is a shared symbol in most of the First Nation across Canada, and
Okay.
there's nominal differences in the myths. Uh, Interestingly, the Mohawk myth as two twin brothers representing chaos and order to some extent, and
Mhm.
there's very interesting aspect to the Cree myth, um, in relation to the role of animals in different part of the creation myth. But so those stories are shared, right? So Turtle Island, we came from the sky world to Turtle Island, right? So there's no going there's no immigration into America. There's no going through the Bering Strait. There's no. We're born in America, right? Our people
Right.
uh, evolved, appeared, were created in America, right? And we were
Okay.
steward of this land, right? We never were we never were entitled to uh, rule this land as much as we were entitled to protect and take care of this world, right?
Hmm.
Because as much as other animals were intricate in our relationship uh, to this world, uh, as much as we were intricate in keeping this world good for them and plentiful for them, right? Because there are some things that only humans can deal with when it comes to the spirit world, when it comes to all those kind of things, right? So that's that's the common precept, and there's a lot of differences, and there's a lot of cultural variations that the colonial toolbox will do a much better job than I could ever do at explaining. Uh, but this notion of being created here and having a stewardship duty toward the land is shared amongst most of the First Nations. I can't speak as much as to the Inuit people in the Inuit beliefs,
Hmm.
unfortunately. I didn't have as much interaction with Inuit communities. That's one of the reasons I really wanted to go in Nunavut and work in the Inuit community. But,
Check one,
maybe
two.
at another time, right? We never know
Right.
where life will get you. But yeah, uh, so most of the history, right,
Yeah.
from
Hold
that
on,
time, and if
Jay.
you're
We got
interested, oh,
we got Yanga that joined us. Hey, Yang, what's
oh,
going
indeed,
on?
yeah,
What's good? What's good? Can you hear me? Am I clear?
Yeah, you're
yeah,
very clear.
yeah,
Man, I am
absolutely.
having the most difficult time. I'm on a whole nother setup, another system. So
Oh, no
give me a
problem.
minute of time, man. But I'm glad to be able to join.
Well,
Cool,
very
cool.
happy to have you here. So Blackson already asked a couple of questions, and now I was kind of in a little bit of a summary of the history of Indigenous people, First Nation people in Canada. So you arrived when I was explaining that most of our history before the European came, right, is oral history. There weren't
Mhm.
much of a written language, right? There were inklings of maybe a start of it, but there weren't really any written record using
So
an actual language.
I have a
Um,
question.
oh, go
I
ahead.
have a question. I'm sorry, I don't mean to take you.
Yes. No,
Was
no.
there a Canadian when we're talking about? So, do the indigenous people are the first people consider themselves kin to the American first people or the indigenous? Did they recognize Canada as being separate? Was there a border?
Well, no, not in this. Like the Canadian border as it exists right now is meaningless, right? Like I've explained, or like I've touched a little bit, right? The biggest difference would be in um, the um, the difference between the people living in South America and Mesoamerica,
Mhm.
the people living in North America, what we would usually call First Nation and Native American in the United States, and the Inuit people that live in the far north, right? An interesting fact is that the Dene people of northern Canada are linguistically and genetically the closest to the Navajo people in the southern part of the United States, right? So that's your connection right there, right? Those if through the linguistic studies and through the genetic studies, we've got a clear path, and that's what I was going to get into after speaking about the mythical portion of it. But we've got a clear idea of how the different migrations in America happened, and the three different distinct wave that we have identified so far. That would represent the people of the Pacific Northwest and South America as the first group, the people of well, that are the Native American and First Nation that lives into the more central and eastern part of North America as the second group, and the Inuit people of the north as the third group, of Alaska and North Canada, right, and a bit of Siberia in Russia too. So it's yeah, you've got those three waves, and yes, the people, to answer your question, from the plains and the eastern coast of the United States, right? The Mohawk people from Ontario and the Ganasatiki region in Quebec are the same people, people that you'll find around the Great Lakes in the United States, right? So
Hmm. Okay. Did I miss the and shouts out to the chat, man. I'm not able to chat in there. Peace to the chat. Appreciate the love, man. Twin, Trevor, Deacon, all our peoples, man. Appreciate you guys following through. So did I miss the healthcare portion in my
oh,
track?
I thought this was for
That's next
next
week.
Oh,
Sunday.
Yeah,
that's next
Yeah,
week.
yeah.
That's
yeah.
next week. I'm sorry, I'd have grabbed the wrong research. I should have
Oh
grabbed my first American research.
no, this is
Okay,
the
well,
original topic that you wanted to do, Yang, originally about the First Nation.
you said what?
This was the original topic that you
Right,
wanted.
right. And I
Okay.
brought I'm at the studio. I appreciate the saying sounds professional sound coming through.
Oh
See,
yeah,
this
yeah.
is what I'm
It
telling
is. It is clear. Yeah.
you. This is the studio. I'm at People's TV here in Atlanta, Georgia. It's the studio.
Hmm.
I'm off in the
Yeah,
new
it's
section.
Chris.
Oh, it's
That's it.
crisp.
Yeah, man,
Listen,
it's
It
really
is very
Chris.
good
they
sound.
Yeah.
they just developed, man. Shouts out to People TV, to Patricia Creighton for running it.
I
One of
mean,
the
it sounds like
operators
you're
out here,
literally in a soundproof
Terrence. I'm
box.
off in the new
Yeah.
podcast area,
Oh shit.
and it is fat. It's and if you're in the Atlanta area, follow through, man. Check it out. This is where you want to be. These are the facilities you want to use. Not only are they here for the people, affordable for the people, but they're very professional facilities. Like you guys are sitting there saying how crisp I'm sounding. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm amazed. I had to have my man come in here and hook me up, taking away from what he had to do, because it's that thorough. But
Man,
yeah,
that sounds good.
so just telling you, sir. So you guys look for the arena to be coming, and I'm gonna start coming here. Is the audio official, twin? Then they better
Yeah.
look out season 5, because this is where I'm coming to do my debates. I'm coming. I'm coming
Nice.
out of the studio to
Your
do my
agreement
debate.
is gonna sound as clear as it can possibly be. That's for sure.
Hey man,
Yeah. Yeah. It's really
hey,
clear, man.
telling you, that's what's up. But the whole conversation is interesting when you talk about the first people, and I know I'll probably have you going over things you said before in the in previous things. But I'd like to talk about the contact with the first people, and that came from the French
Oh, we
originally, right?
weren't even there yet, so we were getting there very soon, actually.
Oh, so the first people is a mass migration.
Huh? Well,
Okay, wait a
no.
minute. I said
So, well, that's exactly where we were, actually, the migration. So
okay.
to close out the mythical portion, right? As mythically, we were created here, but
Hold
as
on one
far
second.
as
Okay.
linguistic and genetic studies allowed us to determine, there were three major waves of migration in Americas, right? At least that has been identified. There most likely have been more. It's debated because there's traces of people in South America about 40,000 years ago, right? And those people could not have come through the Bering Strait. So they must have followed the coast, or they must have came through Polynesia. Through the Pacific. There's traces that there might have been people here 40,000 years ago in South America, but in North America, most traces date back 15 20,000 years ago at the Bering Strait, 15 to 12,000 years ago into the Americas, right? The first wave, interestingly, uh, all went to South America, right? And
Mm.
left a trace around the Pacific Northwest, where different communities there, culturally and genetically and linguistically, share traits with the community that led to the Incas and the Mayas in the in the Southern America and Mexico, right? And
Oh, wait, so you're saying they started up north and then went down south?
following the Pacific Northwest all down to Meso and South America, right? The first wave. That's what
Yeah,
genetics and linguistics indicates, and cultural affinities, some cultural affinities, right? Like the only place in North America where there were slavery. In first people was in the Pacific Northwest, and there was also slavery in the South, right?
right.
So those are, and if you look at the different cultural dresses and the clothing, the jewelry. There's definitely a link there, right? So, but and genetics and linguistics also uh, further confirm that. Now, those are the oldest traces of people in America. Genetically, those people are related to the oldest, the 20,000 years ago, people that we found at the Bering Strait. So it's assumed that the first people who came through the Bering Strait about 20,000 years ago followed along the Pacific Northwest coast, and they went to Meso and South America. Then, about 10,000 years ago, a second wave would have came in through the Bering Strait, and came down through the Pacific Northwest and intermingled with the people that stayed in the Pacific Northwest from the first wave, but then diffused more towards the east, taking Central North America and settling to the east of North America. And those people were the people that that became the Algonquinian and the Iroquoian people we were talking about earlier. Their linguistic, genetics, again, and cultural affiliations uh, testify to that. And 7 to 6,000 years ago, there's a third influx of people that would stay in in the north and would become the Inuit people, right? And then there's a whole bunch of mythical and oral history that's super interesting to me. Uh, and the written history really begins about 400, well, 500, yeah, it's close to 520, 530 years ago right now, when, and that's the debate, was the first European in North America, if we don't count the Vikings, right, and those very first early contacts about 1,500 years ago. But was it John Cabot from England, or was it Jacques Cartier from France, right? John Cabot was here first, but they never intended to do a colony here. They never intended to do much here. Um, whilst Jacques Cartier and Samuel de Champlain afterwards were
Where's
the very first.
where is here? Quebec? Are you talking about Quebec?
Yes, they
Okay.
entered through the St. Lawrence River,
Right.
St. Lawrence River. Yeah.
So if they weren't intending to colonize, what was Jean Cabot? What was his intention?
John Cabot, I learned about him only when I went in Saskatchewan. Never have we talked about John Cabot in Quebec, right? In the French-speaking part of Canada. What I understand from what I learned about John Cabot in Saskatchewan is that he was exploring to try and find either trading partners or maybe resources to exploit easily, like gold or something that would be worth it. Didn't find any of that. Maybe trading partners, but very flimsy alliances, very flimsy contact. So we came back to England without any kind of successful plan to do anything, right? But then Jacques Cartier, when he came, um, he he had a different experience. He saw potential in the fur trading. he saw potential not for colonizing just yet. That was Samuel de Champlain that was commissioned to start the first colony, but King of France, I'd say, had a more a more grander idea of how we would exploit the North American continent that maybe the King of England
Was
had.
King Louis the 14th, the
I'm
Sun
not sure
King?
who was the king at that time.
What time period are we talking?
14,
Yeah, that'd be the Sun
1432,
King.
1434,
Yeah, that'd be
1534, sorry,
yeah, that'd be Louis.
1534.
That'd be Louis the 14th. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, yeah, John Cabot was in 1492, and Jacques Cartier was in 1534.
Okay. Well,
So Quebec was founded in 1492.
No, Jacques Cartier came for the first time in
In
Quebec, the
1492.
name that they were giving to the area that's now called Quebec. Well, it's called Quebec, right? And this land, right? He was just going to trade on it, right, and exploit it, right? So they were
Mhm.
sending expeditions to trade for fur. So they were sending, we will call them coureurs des bois, right? And those people are the people with the fur hat, like doing portage and going down the river with canoes, right, to get
Yeah.
to where the native communities are to trade with them for fur, bring it back to the
Hmm.
boat, bring it back to France, right? And then in 1608, the King of France commissioned Samuel de Champlain to go and create the first colony in the New World, in New France, as they would call it. He would create he would call the land New France, Nouvelle France, and the first city, the first colony would be the city of Quebec in 1608. After that, they I don't remember the name of the guy who did it, but the next city down the line was Trois-Rivières. And as they were going down the St. Lawrence River, they eventually created Montreal, pushing down all the native people they found along the way further down the St. Lawrence River until we had a beautiful mix of all different people in where my ancestors, my grandparents, my great grandparents live in um, uh, Ganasitake. But yeah, so that the contact with the French at first was as trading partners, then as colonizers. But the way the French um, kind of seeped in native culture was interesting, right? Because they tried to infiltrate themselves in the conflicts because there were conflicts between
Yeah.
different
It
First
sounds about
Nations,
right,
right?
Zero.
And
Yeah.
huh?
No, I'm reading some of the comments. Zero sounded saying it would sound like y'all didn't have a 19th century era either, that it was bypassed. By the way, some of those comments on the mic were funny as hell. That shit is funny. Anyway, I won't go back. But yeah, I agree. I was just agreeing with that comment with Zero. MD, remember the French were using the waterways for trade from Quebec west, then over to modern day Green Bay, then down the Mississippi.
Yeah, they expanded. Yeah, Louisiana was a big French territory before the United
Right,
States bought it,
right,
right?
absolutely.
So
You can't forget about the Louisiana Purchase. Right, yeah. The French had a Louisiana and what else did they purchase from the French? Wasn't it some of St. Louis? I think it's another part of the purchase. Louisiana
well,
and
Louisiana in the Mississippi was a small part of the land. They bought uh, pretty much most of the East Coast from the French,
yeah.
right? And big part of central United States also, because of the fur trading, right? The French covered a lot of ground in America. But because they were fighting it off with the British at some point, they just didn't fucking care and abandoned everything. So yeah, but yeah. So while they were here, they tried to seep themselves into the conflicts between the different First Nations and try to position themselves as the only mediator. Right, every deal that indigenous people would broker between themselves, the French would come in saying, no, 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 that deal is invalid. We weren't involved in it. right? We didn't broker it, so that deal doesn't work. You're gonna betray each other. We have to create a new deal involving us, right? So they try to infiltrate themselves in every aspect of society to try and control it. And well, they try also to they were the first to create missions in order to convert indigenous people to Catholicism, to try to then have them mimic their communities on the colonies, and try and create good Christians, right? Um, and well, this relationship, they never sign a treaty, right? They never made it official that they were taking over the land, right? Their goal was to assimilate, right? So they just pumped colonists and tried to convert native people, try to marry native people to try to water down, right, the lineage. So you've got a lot of people that call themselves native in Quebec. Um, that their only ancestry dates back to the 15 and 1600, right? During this assimilation period, and that's a different problem that that we have to deal with, because they fight land claims through that, and that's interesting. That's something you don't have in the rest of Canada. That's especially a little cherry on the Sunday of Quebec. But yeah, so that situation led to that, right? The way they tried to assimilate the indigenous people. The actual only people of French descent, I'd say that went the other way and tried to assimilate themselves into the native people. Those people were led by Louis Riel, and they moved out to the western part of Canada because they saw there were nothing to do in Quebec with the Catholic and the French. So they moved out to western Canada, to Saskatchewan, and they created the Métis Nation, right? That's the third arm of Indigenous people as recognized by the government of Canada, with the First Nation and the Inuit people. There's also the Métis people. The government of Canada killed Wiriel and hung him, but then they recognized these people as a people. So I guess this fight wasn't for nothing. But yeah, so that's kind of the first contact with the French, right? And after that, they were used as cannon fodders with during the war with the British.
Hmm. Hmm. So that's the what major. I didn't even know. I looked at how long you guys have been on here. You've been on here for a minute, and I know I'm gonna have to. I don't have much longer before I have this program I have to go to. But what if anything coming out when we talk about the first people, we're talking about their meeting with the French. I know in American history, at least we're taught about some of the indigenous revolts, some of the fights, the conflict against the colonizers and the indigenous people, all the way to one of our biggest things that a lot of us are taught about with the Maroons, the so-called runaway slaves and indigenous people. When we talk about the Seminole Wars and shit like that, do the first people in Canada have a major revolt or a major uprising or like some point stamped in history for them where they were like, enough of the bullshit, enough of the
There were
French
some.
colonizers?
There were some.
Mm-hmm.
Most of those that might have happened between the well in the 16th and between the 16th and the 18th century, I'd say most of those are not much talked about. They've been buried by the colonizers' history, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, those are mythical fights to some extent, right? Fight by individuals, right? Not as organized. Um, those kind of resistance movements are more localized,
Okay.
and you'll hear from them when you go in the native communities, but you won't hear from them in history, right? The same
Right.
way you'd
Right.
hear from them in American history. Those big fights against the army and such, those didn't happen here in Canada because the way the French did it was so um, uh, I don't know the term, insidious, right? That it didn't lead to those kind of confrontations, right? They've been massacres, they've been conflicts, but no big great battles, right? Then I'm not as aware of the history in the West, so there might be some in the West I'm not thinking of. That's not where I live, but that's not something that's discussed much in their history either. They try to, and there's a reason for that, but they try to put the accent more on peaceful resolution of those conflicts, because
Absolutely.
most of the nations that are still around in a position to deal, in a position to fight, are Iroquoians society, matriarchal societies, and they do believe in diplomacy. They're the one who created the Iroquoian Confederation, the Six Nation Confederation, on which the United States Constitution has been inspired, from what I understand. But the yeah, the then the way the British came in, right? They tried to go to treaties, very unfair treaties, in retrospective, but they did it through diplomacy too, right? The real fights and uprising, this started in the 90s and the 2000s. In the 90s, we had the Oka crisis. I've got documentaries for you if you're interested in the subject, that are gonna piss you off. And the Oka crisis was in Quebec, where with the people where my grandmother came from, right? Uh, like I explained to Blackson, in Genesetake, right, the Mohawk territory. That's not considered a reservation. That's ancestral land, right? And they created reservation to get the people out of it, but part of the Genesetake Renan stayed to this day, and they're the people who were fighting in '91 against the army. There's some interesting pictures from that, and yeah, they fought the Canadian army straight on. The only casualty was on the side of uh, the, the the state police of Quebec, right? The provincial police of Quebec. But still, there were a standoff with tanks and everything. So, and then you had all the different little movements against the pipelines in the West, right? More recently, but that's the kind of big fights we have. We didn't have big recorded fights in history of like the stereotypical Indian bands against the 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 cavalry, right? So
Wow. Indian man's against the cavalry, right? Okay. Okay. That's interesting. I was curious about that. So it's interesting. I hate I left there. I had a couple questions. I left my particular. Okay, particular notes. Listen, guys, it's been great. I told you it was going to be short lived. I'm sorry it took me so long to be able to jump on here. So I need to go do our thing. I will catch you, son. You and I will talk. Got to get in the studio, man, so you can see what's cracking. We can start rocking some of the shows out of the studio and see how this thing goes. But definitely, man, I catch you on the flip, and I'll call you after I finish producing this show right here, son.
Okay.
maybe I see that MD20 mentions the Iroquois War. So if you're interested in that aspect, most of the war in Canada weren't between the indigenous people and the colonizer as much as the indigenous people being used as soldiers by one side of colonizer fighting another side of colonizer, using a different group of indigenous people as soldiers, as cannon fodders, right? Cannon fodders and also tacticians for a different world. But yeah, right. So they were never fighting only against, there were some groups that were fighting both invaders, but because the invaders allied themselves with different indigenous group, those didn't last for long for most of them, right? They did they and I know that there's some Navajo people that are held in a high esteem for their fight. There's some Apache people that are held in high esteem for their fights, that they held on their ancestral land, right? But very few people in Canada managed to do that. Some did, And again, the decolonial toolbox that I'm going to present soon, because we're already getting to an hour, uh, is going to explain it better than I ever could. But those different nations that still have their ancestral land, like Genesita right? Their fight is not over because their ancestral land is not recognized for them. Uh, Reservations are recognized as lands for indigenous people, but those are not ancestral lands most of the time. Um, I, I can't think right now of a reservation that's an ancestral land. I don't know of any off my head. So if there is any, there is very few. Again, I think we 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 might have to do a part two if we want to go deeper into the rest of the history, the more modern history. I touched a bit about the Oka crisis, but I didn't touch at all really about the residential and Catholic schools, right?
Right.
And the child protection services and their role. But I'd like if you allow it to take to share my screen to take the last 10 minutes maybe to share this toolbox that I was talking about, so that people can on their own time if they want to explore it. Um,
Do you know how to do a share screen,
yeah,
Zanzi? Oh,
I
okay, okay,
can
cool. Okay, so I'm gonna
share screen,
share screen. I think.
share. There you
Oh,
go.
there we go. Yep, yep, there he is. Okay,
Okay.
all right, cool. We got it.
So that's called the decolonial toolbox, right? And really, what it is a set of explanation as to why they believe it was important to create some kind of aggregating resource.
Okay,
Um, so the document, the PDF that I'll show where I'll put the link in the description right now, actually,
okay.
on where to download it. It's on the website of the Concordia University. Um, I put the English link. There's also a French link if anybody speaks French in the chat, but I think most of you will be an English speaker, so I'll
Hmm.
share the English link. But on that PDF, what it's mostly going to be is explanation of context around why those different aspects that are discussed, like the introduction to indigenous reality, the terminology, right?
Hmm.
Indigenous territories, um, colonial history, like how to make to unlearn those propagandas that has been
Right,
provided
right.
by the
Are there any
colonizer, right?
like
Um,
medicines on there too, like natural herbs?
no, that's the well, in itself, it's not a subject, but I'm
Okay.
guessing that this would be part of the how can I say? It could be part of unlearning the colonial history by learning the the more traditional history. But that's not the goal of this toolbox, right? The goal of this toolbox is to make it clear for people who wants to be allies, what are we fighting for, what affected us, right? What are the injustices that were rendered on our people, and
Right,
what are the goals of the organization, right, of those people. And again, we're not a monolithic people. This was created mainly by Genesitake people, mainly by Mohawk people from the region of Montreal and around Montreal, right?
right,
And that represents the idea of mostly the traditional governments and activist member of the community of that particular First Nation community, right? Genesitake on. And
okay.
they so what this is pages of context, and then they send you to links, right? That focuses more on different aspect of those subjects, but
Hmm.
explained by people who live those realities, right? If you're going to speak about Métis people, it's Métis people that are going to explain it, right? If they're going to speak about Algonquin people, it's so they're going to try and show you. So it's made by people from the Mohawk
Right,
or Kanesatikuana nation, but we do try to cover as much as Canada as we respectfully can with the resources we had and the people who decided to work with us, right?
Okay.
So we have a map that showcases the land of the whole of Canada, the where the native communities were, their ancestral land. We've got videos and different um, resources that will explain the difference between a reservation and between ancestral
Right.
land, right?
Okay.
And the old displacement. Um, that's in the territory. In the colonial experience, we're going to talk about how not only uh, the, 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 the the European views of history was put forward, but how our stories were changed to fit their
Right.
narrative to some extent,
Hmm.
right? Um, and as much as there are links to specific um, uh, media, there's always also other books and other resources that are discussed. And then we're talking about the colonial strategies, right? And we're putting forward how exactly the Canadian government did it. And I love the fact that they included quote, right? So um, Duncan Campbell Scott here, who was an Indian Affairs deputy, right? Because they were the Ministry of Indian Affairs, and those were the people responsible of dealing with the Indians. And that's a quote, right? I want to get rid of the Indian problem. Our objective is to continue until there is not an Indian that has not been absorbed into the body politic. And there is no Indian question and no Indian department, right? So this
Right. Wow.
assimilation idea that the French introduced when the English and the Canadian government was created, Canadian that never went away, right? This
Right.
idea stayed, and that's why I was saying that the way that the Indian Act, the way that indigenous status is recognized, the way that reservation works, it's all aimed at attrition of the native people until they don't exist anymore and nobody is fighting for this land, right?
Right.
But so this strategy is put forward, right? They explain the Indian Act and they explain the residential school, right? So the residential schools, those are those Catholic schools across the country, where for a couple of years now they've been finding mass graves of hundreds of children's buried there, native children's, right? So the Pope came 2 weeks ago and walked across Canada apologizing for on behalf of the Catholic Church for all the rape and murder. And yeah, people have different views on that, right? Some people are expecting, some people think, oh, well, that should be enough. Some people think, no, man, that's not that's not gonna fix anything. Having this guy coming around and just yeah. And then it's explaining how in the 60s, right, and in the 2000s, even though it's not the Catholic school doing it anyway, it's the Canadian government the well, with the with the child protection services, right?
Right. Right.
Like most children in Canada are in foster care or in child protection services are indigenous. It's
Mm.
they're still sitting kids, right?
Right.
So this toolbox would tell all those stories better than I ever could.
Right.
If you want to have a part two where I continue to give you my perspective on the subject, I'd be glad to do so. But that document will lead you towards a plethora, a multitude of
Right.
perspective that are going to give you the best idea because like I said, it's not monolithic, and I can't speak for everyone. I can speak only for myself, right? So
Right.
I tried to convey what has been conveyed, and I've got stories. I didn't give any anecdotal stories, but I've got some very interesting anecdotal stories to share if you're interested in them for another time. But um, yeah, I'm very grateful for having had this platform today just
Yeah,
to
man.
discuss what I've discussed and to show this tool to whoever might be interested. So And thank you very much for that, Blackson.
Yeah, man. Well, people are on it already, man. So yeah, thank you for sharing that information. And you got, I mean, we have a reference point to go back to, so that is good. I think Yanga, he was ready for the whole Medicare thing. So we're gonna
Yeah.
deal with that Sunday. So I still want you to prepare for that on Sunday.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because I wanna dive into the Medicare system of Canada in comparison to the US, and have a little discussion on that. But hey Zanzi, I want to thank you, brother. I know we gotta deal with a situation on another platform, so we need to get to that. But yeah, man, we thank you for coming out, man. And Sunday at 6, we're gonna deal with the Medicare.
And Saturday at 2, as I know you invited me to come with Nature Mom too. The subject at
Oh
that
yeah, yeah,
point
yeah,
was
yeah.
gonna be just socialism in general. I think is that it? So African socialism and or
Nature.
what?
Yeah. You know what? Oh man.
We have to clarify
Yeah,
that
yeah,
still.
yeah, yeah. I gotta clarify that. Yeah, that's the thing. I gotta keep when the people say the shows, I gotta make sure I jot it down right then and there because like I be so fixated on the time that I be forgetting the titles. So I do apologize for that, y'all. Um, I'm trying to make it to where I want to give y'all access so y'all could put up y'all own titles. Um, I'm working on that now. Where you at next, Black Son? Where you at? Um, the next show, I think tomorrow, MD, we gonna do a champions corner. So, um, champions corner. I'm thinking. Oh, I want KLT to come on the show. So, and then I think Yang is working on getting commissioner. I think he's working on getting the commissioner on. And so I'm thinking, yeah, I want to, yeah, like I said, I want to give it. I don't have KOT's information. I need to get his information, but I definitely want to have him. Okay, know what channel you going to next today? I don't know what channels. Is okay. I think he mean the next show. So does Angel got something lined up? If so, I'll be over. I'll check out Angel's show because I know he did a lot. No, did he do a live? No, he did a rebroadcast, and I'm not sure if he's doing a live or not. But yeah, y'all definitely subscribe to him. I want to definitely catch his next live. So I don't know when he's going on live again. So, um, yeah. Shout out to Nature Mom. Oh, sorry about that. Hit the mute button. So, again, y'all, we got a show tomorrow, and yeah, 6 o'clock. That'll be, like I said, that'll be consistent time. Nature Mom will be at 2, and Zanzi be back on here Sunday. So let's see. Never mind. I thought you said you were going over to another channel panel after
No,
this.
Yanga was
Oh,
going to a different show. I think after that.
Okay. I didn't. Okay, I didn't hear that part. Okay, yeah.
That's what I think he said. That's what I think he said.
Oh,
Yanga.
is Solar having something tonight?
I don't know if it was with Solar. No, does he go on any other show than Solar and yours or?
The only other show that I know Yanga does is this and SVDL. Those are only 2 shows that I know. I don't know any other panels.
Or maybe there was something else. Maybe there was a reason he was at the studio in Atlanta.
Well, no. He's getting his hours in on the studio, so we're working on getting the arena back into a studio.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Oh,
That's we're
okay.
working on it, but he has to get in so many hours per.
Mm.
I think he's almost complete, but when you do public access, you got to get in so many hours before they certify you, And I
Mm,
think Yanga's at the end of his training, and so now they said they opened up a new podcast room. So I was like, oh, a podcast room. That's why he sounds so crisp like that.
yeah.
But I got to see it because like I said, it's been years since I've been there, and it's been years. And he said that a lot has changed.
It's the
And
same studio you were in before.
no, the studio we were in before was Comcast. That was in a different city. This
Right.
one is in Atlanta. This is People's TV.
Okay.
People's TV. They're owned by. I don't know if it's No, I don't know if it's Comcast or affiliated with Comcast. I don't know. I gotta ask Yang that question because I remember during the end of when we were doing our shows, we did a couple of shows and then we kind of just they were undergoing some changes and then so
Hmm.
we kind of just took a break and we took like a year off and now we're
Yeah,
back and
well,
so
for a while you started doing like interviews with people, but mostly at your home on the field, and
yeah,
then you
yeah,
took a break. Yeah.
yeah. I was going to like meeting people in the field and all that stuff, which was cool, but it's more work. You know what I'm saying? You
Yeah.
got to get
Yeah.
the lighting right, and then the wind's blowing, the mic up. That outside shooting is oh god, and then we did like this gang summit, and I was trying to get, you dealing with people from the streets. A lot of them different organizations. A lot of them have like an old code, like they can't be on media, can't be on this and that, and I'm just like, oh shoot. So hopefully things are changing now. I mean, I got some people I do want to interview that are part of some organizations, but now it's more lax. Now that's why I want to come back into it because you got street organizations now that are doing YouTube pages and there's a whole like prison genre and all that, and there's like they're blowing up, and I knew they would, and so I was trying to catch them at that curve before they got to the YouTube. Now they're on the YouTube. Now I got to catch up to them. So yeah, shout out to those channels. Shout out to Dubs. Shout out to Jay Williams. Shout out to dang man. It's so many. It's so many. Wes Watson. Shout out to goddamn Big Sid. OG. It's so many prison channels, man, that I want to have on the arena. Um, uh, Vegas prison stories, man. Shout out. Yeah, I gotta get a hold of these guys, man, because they got some incredible stories.
That's something I've. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
that's.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to definitely, yeah, but a lot of the organizations, I don't want to mention any names because the organizations don't like being mentioned. But you got individuals from the organizations that they won't. And I'm not here to get into their business. I just want to hear some of the war stories that they're telling in prison and all that. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely want to touch on some of that stuff. So that's just going to be a different segment of the arena. But yeah, we used to go out into the field, man, and meet these different organizations. So I
Well,
definitely
if you're getting a
touch
studio
base with.
back, that's the first step into making the show back what it was, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
watching the show, the old episodes, right? Having all you guys in the same room arguing, you with the hammer and everything, that
yeah.
was fucking great, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the studio is something just different about a studio than doing it at the house. The house is cool, but the studio is just it's something that just studio is nothing like it, man. It's a whole different feel. It's a whole
indeed.
different feel, man. But I mean, the house is cool, but the house is more convenient. But the studio is something different. It's a whole different beast. So yeah, we're working on that now. And like I said, he's at the end of the training. So yeah, they're gonna let him of course get full access to the studio. And yeah, we'll be ready to do some shows from there.
All right. Well, I am sure maybe Yanga would hear it, but very glad to hear that you're putting all the hard work to get this going, man.
Hmm.
All the credit to you.
Yeah, man. Man. So yeah. Oh yeah, MD, yeah, that was us. We were on Peachtree. Wait, was it Peachtree? Yeah, it was Peachtree Industrial. Yeah, we used to be over there, man. That was a huge studio. That was Nah, you know what? People's TV is huge too, but um, Comcast was a different beast. You know, People's TV. Um, Comparing those two studios is, Comcast. Um, they let's just say
They got more money.
they yeah, they had more money. Yeah, I
It's a
guess.
bigger name. I know Comcast,
Yeah,
Public People's
yeah.
TV. That's the name. I don't
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, they had Comcast, and then they on the field. Well, again, I learned a lot when I went through their training school about cameras and all that stuff. So it helped me as far as like now I know what to look for when I look for cameras. You know what I'm saying? I look for the thing to do is look for frame rates. The higher the frame rates, the better, and shutters and
Mhm.
all that. So yeah, but yeah, I'm gonna get it.
Frame
Like I
rate
said,
and resolution, and I guess
yeah.
the amount of light it can capture. Because
Hmm.
from what I understand, the more frame rate you go, the
Yeah.
more you lose resolution and the more you lose light capturing because the shutter is open for a lesser time, so you've got less
Right.
time
Right.
to capture light.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's a triangle that you have to work a balance with
Yeah.
to get what you want, right?
That's right. Yep. Yep. Yep.
You don't need 5 million frames a second unless you're the slow mo guys. So
Yeah. 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 Like John Woo. Yeah. Was it John Woo? Yeah.
yeah,
He's a master at that. So yeah. But yeah. Let's wind it down, Zanzi. So yeah, you can join us for Nature Mom show because I'm oh gosh, I'm trying to remember the title. She's got the title. What is the title? What is the title? I'm gonna have the title ready. Like I said, y'all stay subscribed. I'm gonna have the lineup for the week posted, and I'll call her back. And then I think we're gonna have Michelle return on Friday for Fitness Friday. So yo, I'm gonna have it all lined up, y'all. I'm gonna have it all lined up. But yeah, Zanzi, I want you to get ready for. I want you to get your research for the Medicaid. I mean, I know you
I'll be
live.
ready to tell
Yeah,
you how good the system is and how fucked it is at the same time.
that's perfect. That's perfect because I already know where Yang is coming, and I guess you can kind of know where I'm coming. So you'll be the neutral buffer. You'll be the neutral buffer in this. Yeah, because yeah, I'm gonna
Because
yeah.
I'm living it.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, I want to definitely, and I know Yang is ready for that because he actually brought notes for that show on this show, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, so that's why, and that's my fault. I got to start, like I said, titling the shows so people can
Oh,
get.
that just talks to how excited he is about the subject. He just always have those notes with him.
Right, right. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna. Yeah, MD said yeah. The thing with Nature Mom is we're going to fill in the gaps because she mentioned how they went from slavery to this bustling rich city. And I'm like, whoa, wait, what happened in between? So, MD, we definitely, and we're going to deal with some reparations too, again, too. So, MD, we definitely want you on that panel because I need to find out what's going on in between. And that I think that a lot of that in between right now, uh, we talk about the Mississippi campaign
So,
and
sorry to interrupt, but I've heard you mention Mississippi camping a lot since
Mhm.
yesterday. From what I understand from it, it's some kind of plan to have black communities secede and create their own kind of nation. That's all intertwined in black nationalism, or
well, not really succeed. I mean, that's the thing that we're me, MD, and Angel are having conflict with Yanga because Yanga is a revolutionary. So he wants revolution. And we're saying the Mississippi campaign, there's a working model there because actually Mississippi campaign, as Angel would say, shout out to Angel, is that it's not a new concept. It's been done before with some of the, like I said, Rosewood, some of the prominent cities that when America was having this Great Depression, these black cities were thriving. So we
like
want to
Tulsa
use
and Texas, or
Tulsa,
okay,
Road, yeah.
those kind of things. Okay. So,
Yeah, yeah,
they want to recreate that to some extent.
yeah. To help our economy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because those all those bustling cities just like rise like the phoenix out of the ashes with the economy, and
Because
right.
yesterday I was hearing about like how much do we trade with non-black communities. So at that point I was thinking, oh, they want to secede or something. But it would be okay. So I'm very interested. I know that you've done a whole video on it, so I just go back and watch it, and maybe it's gonna put things a little bit
Well,
clearer
I
for
think in
me
a
for
sense,
Saturday.
and MD, he's in the chat. He can correct me. We want to succeed from their economical system and come up with our own because right now, the economical system, like history has repeated, is not working for Black folks. The minute we take control of it, it works for us. But
Mm.
when they take control of it, it don't work not only for us but for nobody, especially this Biden idiot right now. So the Mississippi campaign, they talk about its fertile land. So I know right now, I'm just giving that as an example. Everybody don't have to be in agriculture, but when Black people, when we plant certain fruits and crops, it tastes like it's supposed to taste. It don't be tasting like Monsanto shit. It don't be seedless fucking watermelons or seedless grapes or seedless
Mm.
this and that and tasting like crap and shit. You know what I'm saying? We got because a lot of these things that we planted, we brought over from Africa. We brought a lot of the slaves brought that with them, and then during the plantation. So these plants have survived these different decades like us. You know what I'm saying? So
Oh, really?
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, and that's why.
There's you're telling me that there's a freaking Afro-American agriculture.
Said it
Like
again.
there's a black agriculture in America with different seeds than what's used in commercial agriculture.
No, what I'm saying is that we Africans are the original agriculturalists for the Europeans, meaning they
Oh,
didn't the plantations they didn't plant. They had us plant
yeah,
it.
yeah,
We
yeah,
were
yeah,
we were
absolutely.
growing the collard greens, the
Yeah.
watermelons,
No, no,
the
but I
yams,
understood that you
yeah.
said that you saved those seeds so that you can say,
Yeah,
"Fuck
yeah, yeah.
Monsanto,
No,
we
no, a
have the
lot of them,
real
yeah.
stuff still."
A lot of them, they hid it in their hair. They brought a lot of seeds over because when they're
Mm.
being captured, they're like, whoa, are we going to, I guess a lot of them knew when they were going into captivity, their first, some of them, their first instinct was like, man, let's take these seeds so we can feed ourselves because they didn't know what the hell was going to go happen. They didn't know, so they were going to take the seeds with them. I guess call that instinct, call it, I don't know what you call it, but they knew that they were going to have to plant their own food, and they did.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I'm gonna let I'm I can't do it no justice. I'm gonna let Nature Mom do it justice. I just I give y'all little gist here and there, but she breaks it down way better than I can. I
Ah,
know the
perfect.
history, but she's more. Yeah, if you hear her talk, she's way more. She be she be breaking it down.
Sweet.
Y'all know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so I'm gonna let her break that down. But yeah, basically, we were the agriculturists, and the number one export, especially going to Saudi Arabia, is our food. But right now, I mean, our food is tasting like crap. I'm going into eat some of these peaches and just some of these produce that taste like it don't taste. Ugh, it's just horrible. But you know, like me, still to this day, I'll go to Kroger, Publix, and let me just say watermelons. Watermelons taste like crap, but there's a local guy that I do, a black guy here in Georgia, and the watermelons be tasting superb. But I'm sure he comes from a long line of sharecroppers that knew how to do it, and they know the secret. And it's not even a secret. It's just that we don't interfere with the genetic makeup of a lot of these fruits.
I mean, not only just for health reasons, and that's good to have that
Mhm.
around, but if ever, if ever there's any kind of catastrophe or any kind of disease
Right,
that start affecting those goddamn GMO seeds, right?
right.
That's gonna be what saves the world. The people. who took the time to
Right.
preserve those kind of
Preserved
seeds,
seeds.
right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
but just think about fucking bananas. We're about to lose the bananas we're eating right now.
Right.
Soon, about 10 years, I think it's expected that they're gonna disappear. We're gonna have to find a new banana. I think it's the third time or second or third time this happens in history, right? The
Uh-huh.
big Michel, like Ghost Michel, the first like commercial banana, uh, got killed off by some kind of fungus like
Right.
50 years
Right.
ago, and now
Yeah.
we're so yeah. I mean, bless diversity in the seed world.
Yeah, well, we got to get back to the natural seeds, man. Like right now, Monsanto, their seeds can actually destroy natural crops. And
Oh yeah,
so
yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna do, you know what? I'm trying to think if I should save that for uh Fitness Friday. I'm gonna put something together because yeah, that Monsanto thing is really no, it's just like seedless grapes, seedless watermelon, seedless this, seedless that. Like, what the fuck?
If
Who
it
the
was
fuck?
only if it was only for the fact that we don't want to eat seeds, I'd be down with it. But it is the control and the look for search for
Yeah, but
power that's
you're
behind it.
messing up the natural order of things when you take the seeds out. I mean, like,
Yeah,
who
no,
the
that
fuck?
definitely you
Yeah,
definitely are.
that's fucking
But
stupid.
I mean, if your plan, right, is to just have the choice, right? You've got one
Mhm.
with seeds and one seedless for those who really don't want to eat seeds, right? Then you still have the one with seeds, right? You still have the real fruit, but Monsanto, their plan is to have nothing that you can then replant, right? That you
Right, right.
always have to
Mhm.
buy from them. So
No.
that's this control aspect that's fucking
Yeah,
messed up in
exactly.
my
Yeah, and
head.
that's yeah, it's fucking it's crazy. So yeah, I'm gonna do something on that. I'm gonna put something together. I'm gonna get with Michelle on Fitness Fridays. We're gonna put something together because I know we could probably really do a nice presentation on that. But hey y'all, we going on it's hour 35. So man, thank you, Zanzi.
My
Thank you to
pleasure.
the chat, man. Y'all be here tomorrow and we out. Peace.
Peace.
Peace, y'all.